Now, there is a serious need for an expansion and improvement in high-speed network services, which are increasingly essential for economic growth and social development. In Africa, broadband development has been a key priority for many governments, as this can support businesses, can also create jobs, can improve access to education, especially healthcare, as well as help bridge the digital divide. Also, after so much deliberation, the federal government, through the Minister of Education, Tahir Mamman, has revealed that candidates seeking admission into higher institutions must now be 18 years and above. And despite pushbacks from the people and even the education stakeholders present, when this announcement was made, the minister insisted that the decision is already a policy and the federal government has keyed into it. Now, Mamman said that candidates are expected to be more mature at 18 years old. People don't exactly understand the kind of maturity he's talking about, but he said that aggrieved parties can approach the National Assembly to amend this policy. These stories are what we'll be digging our fangs into today. Welcome to Fafanua Africa. My name is Blessings Mosugu and I am your host on the show that focuses mainly on the youths, the challenges, the advantages available to us, especially on the African continent. You don't want to miss this conversation, so stick around as we get started. Now, the telecom sector is responsible for a significant amount of carbon emissions due to the energy consumption of network equipment and data centers. But at the same time, there's the need for higher speed internet. The telecom sector plays a crucial role in our modern society, as you all very well know, providing high-speed communication and connectivity to citizens worldwide. However, as the sector continues to grow, so does its carbon footprint. Now, according to recent studies, the global telecom industry is responsible for over 2% of greenhouse gas emissions worldwide. The urgency to decarbonize the telecom sector is multifaceted. Not only does this sector contribute to climate change, but it also has the potential to support sustainable development goals. And this is important because what to do? We have to improve our broadband theory and of course connectivity. But at the same time, we cannot afford to keep contributing to carbon emission. This is what we're talking about in the first half of this show. And joining me to have this conversation is Diseye Isoun, an expert on African broadband and digital infrastructure. Thank you so much, Diseye, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure. Now, going straight to the conversation, I'm just going to go straight and ask the first question, which to me is the most important. Is it possible to achieve broadband development and decarbonization of the telecom sector at the same time?
Yes, I do think it is possible. I think it's a thread, that needle that needs to be threaded carefully. But indeed, I think it is possible. I'll give you some statistics that are sometimes useful. The total amount of base stations in Nigeria is something around 30 to 35,000. And the diesel generators in those base stations emit as much carbon footprint as all of Japan in total, as an example. And so the swapping out, let's call it the transition from diesel to more sustainable, renewable energy, is doable, and I have a few thoughts there. While the future design of base stations can be done such that they are more environmentally friendly, they take less power, and actually through that they can also empower youth, because you can now make broadband more local, use smaller base stations and more of them, and less and more environmentally friendly at the same time. So I think it takes some careful planning, but it is possible.
Right. Now, while strong improvements have been made at demand and offer levels, Africa still has the biggest coverage and usage gaps in the world. Why do you think that is for so long a time?
Yeah, I think the big telcos who have done a great job in connecting people for basic things, texting, simple WhatsApps, communicating with the village, doing some basic business with your supplier for your agricultural goods. This kind of low throughput connectivity is quite prevalent and does work relatively well in Africa. However, to move to high-speed broadband, you need a slightly different model. I always give the example that in developing countries, 85% of broadband is through ISPs, traditional ISPs, and 15% is through the mobile telcos, like the MTNs, etc. Whereas in Africa, about 95% of broadband is through our phones, and only about 5% through the local ISPs and through fixed wireless and fiber. So we cannot run our whole requirement and backbone, let's say, on mobile. So part of any plan to deepen penetration of broadband must include empowering ISPs and making sure that the whole effort doesn't come from the telcos, who are really more voice companies at their DNA. They're trying to enter broadband, but they certainly could use some help.
All right. Now, this is the 21st century, and African leaders still weaponize the internet against the citizens, especially during unrest. We've seen this happen across different African countries. So with this in mind, is this the right time to be discussing a broader usage of it or a better usage of it?
Yeah, I think we need better monitoring systems and better oversight so that I would say that there's some kind of not always productive mix of rumor, assumptions, guesses versus also perhaps not the best communication by those that can influence the internet access, so that we do have, let's call it, accurate information. You may get a slowdown in your internet or you cannot connect, and you associate that immediately with some kind of regulation. However, it could be a fiber cut. It could be an issue of a lot of people on at the same time, which, because there's some event in the country or there is protest, there may be added pressure on the network. So I think being able to ensure that we have transparency and we have a way in which to monitor these types of downtimes, I think, is most critical.
Right. Again, just for a better understanding, why is it important to decarbonize the telecom sector?
Because ultimately, one, at the base of it is that it's good for Nigerians to breathe clean air, to live in a place where their health care and their quality of life is effectively not affected by having a base station that is pushing out fumes of diesel, day after day, in many instances 24 hours a day, because a lot of our power backbone is unreliable. So a lot of the telcos just default to some extent to diesel in many instances. And secondly, it can create jobs. It's as simple as you can imagine a situation where you are putting in solar panels, you're putting in batteries, which is ubiquitous across the country, so everyone would benefit. And then ultimately, this also helps from an economic perspective. And there's a lot of incentive around the world to reduce carbon emissions. So we should be able to work with our global partners on this.
So we've established the reason for the importance of broadband development for decarbonization, but I want us to also find out what the reason for broadband development is, because some would argue that, there's good enough usage in Nigeria especially, maybe not in Africa generally, but many people say, a lot of Nigerians already have access to, technology. So is there a need to improve the usage?
Yes, I think quite specifically and obviously perhaps education. The kind of connectivity you need to do good research, to carry out certain kinds of academic practice requires more than just tethering your phone. Most Nigerian students get on the internet by tethering their phone mobile to their laptop, which is not the ideal way to connect. Healthcare facilities also need high-speed broadband. Commercial centers also need significant amount of broadband, banking sector, and young people engaging, creating businesses, if there's ultimately a tourism industry improvement, all of these entertainment, creating content, all these things that we do get involved with and can generate dollars for young Nigerians requires broadband. And so ultimately it has its negatives if it's not managed or if it's not rolled out properly, but there are a lot of benefits to being connected.
All right. Now, there exist contextual and ecological factors within developing context that must inform the choice, the type, and the timing of deployment of broadband technologies. What could some of these factors be?
Well, for example, I think good broadband ultimately should be relatively localized. For example, if your phone stops connecting or you can't get on internet, there's no number you can call to say, I cannot get onto my phone internet. But if you're a middle-class Nigerian or you have your family, your internet goes off in your house, most places of the world, you can make a call and get support. And so what we need to ultimately do is build out local ISPs who know their backyard, can sell to the local plaza, the hospital, the school, friends, etc., and connect that area to which they live and they know, and literally have to sometimes physically go to support people to stay on the internet. So this kind of small ISP approach, I think, builds jobs and ultimately is also much more environmentally friendly because those base stations are much smaller and less power hungry.
So do you think that these two concepts, especially the one relating to broadband technology, can in turn better the economy of the African continent, especially Nigeria? Is there any correlation?
Yes, I do believe so because one of our strengths is our young people who are very entrepreneurial. And so if, for example, you franchise, it's almost you think of a McDonald's. McDonald's is a company, but many people own McDonald's businesses and make money that way. So you can have an ISP who franchises out to local folks and ISPs who run an ISP business and they connect, 50 to 100 people and they make a business for themselves. So this is the way in which I think we can also empower youths while also providing broadband penetration.
Right. Now, according to analysis, the global broadband market is set to grow from 1.4 billion subscribers in 2023 to 1.8 billion in 2028. We cannot afford to be lost, but it seems that we're still so backwards as a continent. Is it possible that we can ever catch up?
We can, and I think each country has to deal with its own challenges and strengths. The current Honorable Minister of Communication Innovation has a fiber initiative, which should help empower our backbone, give us and give ISPs a stronger backbone. And like I said, I think certain policies that will strengthen small ISPs, who will then leverage that and also hopefully find cheaper and more renewable, sustainable ways to connect people to the internet. I think it is indeed possible for us to step up to that challenge.
So bearing in mind also the possibility of digital fraud, because we've talked extensively about the importance of, better technology, higher end technology, but let's also remember that there are dangers, which include, of course, digital fraud. On the part of the government or regulatory agencies for the internet, is there a way that they can step up their game so that if we're having a discussion about broadband technology, it can be in tandem with how to control the usage of social media so as not to, shoot ourselves in the leg? Because at the end of the day, I mean, we're already seeing hackers. We are in a continent where we don't even have, high enough access to technology, but we're seeing people make the most of the little that they have. So imagine having better access to technology. Definitely this is going to be a continuous conversation of, hacking and those illegal activities online. So how can we better monitor the usage?
It's a good question. And of course, this is always a balancing act between censorship and freedom of speech and transparency around and avoiding, sort of censorship or the feeling that your activities are being managed. I think ultimately education of the users and being able to use in so many things in life, like they say, you'll say Lagos is dangerous or New York is dangerous. Well, it's about common sense. It's about some street smarts. And the same goes for the digital highways. It's about getting onto a website and looking at your URL strip at the top, and it says this is not, you can clearly see this might not be a safe site to go to. It's to say, this person has just engaged me online, but do I know who they are? Do I know where they are? Am I asking the right questions? So I think a lot of the empowerment of the user and the education of the users, I think, will go as quickly as any kind of over-regulation of the industry.
Right. In towing the line of that as well, we are also familiar with the fact that kidnapping has become the order of the day, especially in Nigeria. And of course, we also still have cyber stalking. We also have identity theft and things like that. And we've heard time and time again that, the government, the security agencies are looking into it. In fact, they've promised that they will boost the defense budget. But at the same time, we're not exactly seeing the sophisticated, defense tools that they promised. We're not exactly seeing a better management of the digital space. So on the part of the government, what do you think they can do in terms of defense, at least to prepare ourselves for these kind of things? Because, of course, kidnapping can also, be done digitally. And a lot of times we've also talked about the fact that some of these kidnappers make videos of their victims and even post online, but still we can't track their location. So what can the government and the security sector do to that regard?
Well, again, there is again that balance. I think the technologies exist to be able to triangulate, for example, and locate a base station to which a kidnapper may be speaking from, so that you can localize where activity is or where someone is being held. All those tools do exist. And again, the key is to ensure that these tools are not used, in the wrong way. And I think, once again, not to beat a dead horse, but to the extent that Nigerians feel like if these kinds of tools will not be misused by their governments, by their security agencies, I think they'll be happy to see it used more. But to the extent people feel like these could be flipped and used against us for any number of reasons, then this is something that people are not comfortable with. So again, ultimately, hopefully, broadband in general and technology makes people improve their livelihoods, and ultimately, hopefully, people resort to those options less often. But again, that is a slightly longer road for us to tow.
All right, that has been a very insightful conversation. Thank you so much, Diseye Isoun, expert on African broadband and digital infrastructure. We're really hopeful that at least, if anything, we can have better access to technology, because I know for a fact that African youth are very illustrious, and this is one of the things that would help them further establish themselves as young people. We do not always have to wait for the government or the job infrastructure. We can make the most of what we have, but what we have has to be good enough for us to work with. So once again, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your thoughts on this.
And thank you for having me.
My pleasure. You're still live with us on Fafanua Africa, and we just talked about broadband technology, and that is not all the conversation we'll be having today, because after the break, we'll be going into something else that is very, very pivotal in the lives of the African youth. So stay with us. We'll be right back. Many thanks for staying with us. It's still Fafanua Africa, and we have just talked about the broadband high technology in Africa and how we can best leverage on that. But the absence of it is another challenge that we're facing, and hopefully that can be resolved. But going forward now to another very important issue that we need to discuss today, affecting the youth. Now imagine having to finish your secondary school education, and instead of proceeding to write your transition exams, you sit at home and take a compulsory gap year or two further elongating your education. Now, the JAM policy meeting is an annual event where stakeholders from the various tertiary institutions in Nigeria sit to decide on appropriate cutoff marks for admissions in the current academic year. Now, the meeting also sets the tone for the year's admission exercise and guidelines by which all institutions must admit students. Now, it was at this meeting that Tahir Mamman, the Minister of Education, said that candidates seeking admission into higher institutions must now be 18 years and above. Now, critical stakeholders in the education sector have condemned this decision of the federal government to peg the age at which students can write the senior secondary school certificate examinations at 18, saying that it will simply draw the sector back. Now, this is the conversation that we'll be having today, and joining me to discuss this extensively is the Co-Convener Fund Education Coalition, Femi Adeyeye. Thank you so much for joining us once again. It's always a pleasure having you.
Thank you so much, News Central, for inviting me. Thank you.
All right, now, Femi, I mean, this news, of course, is something that I think everybody has heard and everybody has in one way or the other reacted to. I want to first find out what your thought is on setting the age at which people can, write their transition exams at 18. What do you think of that?
Yes, I first of all, while it is important that I state this, that when I was called upon to speak on this particular issue, I consider it very unnecessary. I won't lie to you, because it is one of the most genuine issues place the priorities. What should actually be the priority of any serious minister of education in Nigeria today? I don't think the age limits or anything that has to do with age should even be on the table at all. And so I consider it so unnecessary, consider it a waste of quality time, or time that we do not even have as a country. As I speak to you today in Nigeria, there are over 13.2 million children who are out of school. These are children who are aged 5, 6, 7, 8, down to 10 years old. So a serious regime should be interested in how to take those children out of the streets and get them back to the classroom, and not setting some kind of age limits to the progress of Nigerian students whose academic life actually is actually always stunted by different issues. There was a time in this country that when you go into the university, you're not sure when you're going to get out. It became a very popular notion that even those who went to Femi Adeyeye University, you used to hear at that time, they would say, you only know when you come into this campus, you don't know when you're going to leave. It is 4 years plus X. So that X can either be due to protests. It can, if you're an activist, you can have like 5 years or 10 years added to it due to victimization. The X can also be economic policies and different other issues. So already the government of the day over the years have actually added a gap year. In fact, gap years to the educational life of students. So now coming out to then institutionalize it and make it very, to make that very bold statement now that you just need to restrict or limit people to the age of 18 before they can get into the university. I feel it is so unnecessary. It is a waste of quality time. It shows that these people are not actually in touch with the realities of time. This is a world where people are innovating at very young age. People are thinking of big things, but a minister of education whose children are most likely not in the country, they have no business with WAEC. And that is why they can't feel this thing, all these things we're talking about. Many of them sit international exams like SAT and the rest. So they don't understand what we're talking about at all. Do you get it? We still have a Yaya Bello who paid, we're still looking for him anyways, who paid the school fee. Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead. You're making a very valid point.
Who paid the school fees of his child in advance for over 5 to 10 years. So these guys don't understand what it means to sit WAEC. They don't even understand the struggles that our parents go through to send us to school. So they don't understand any of these things that we're talking about. And that is why you can see a government concerning itself with limiting the age of progress for people, while there are serious issues There are children today in, I listened to one of my comrades at the New Central Town Hall, and I'm seriously, I must say kudos to New Central TV for putting up the town hall in Abuja, where he made a very salient point that you have children working as illegal miners, as in working for illegal miners in places like Bokos. These children need to go to school. You're not concerned about that, but you're concerned about how to limit people. And it's just good to say that they don't understand what they're doing. Let's put it very straight.
I'm genuinely glad that you broke that down, because the next question was going to be, is this our priority? But obviously it's not. Now, they argue that, for for success in school generally, you're required to have academic and behavioral readiness. What do you make of that? And how does that have anything to do with age? Can you hear me?
I'm really struggling with the broadband, but go ahead. I think I can hear you now. It's part of the issues.
It's one of the issues. So I was saying that one of the arguments that was given, and let's not forget that some people are actually in support of this, because many people would argue that children need to be mentally ready, even though statistics have shown, or data has shown, that even at 18, 20, your brain is not completely formed yet. But many people would argue that you need to be mentally ready, you need to be mature enough to some extent to actually go to school, and so they do agree with that. What do you make of that?
Yeah, one of the things we do in this country is this. We do not evaluate policies. Aside not understanding or not bringing out policies based on evidence, we also do not evaluate, we do not evaluate to also check if these policies are making sense. And that is why, there was a report credited to Obasanjo, where Obasanjo said the policies of the World Bank are actually anti-progress, they're anti-poor policies. And this same Obasanjo used those policies throughout since 1999, when he was, president in the civilian regime. And that does not mean that if those policies are brought back, which we are living their reality today, they will still not use them. So there are a number of things that we do not evaluate when they happen. There is no evidence to buttress this particular policy that people need to be mentally mature. So what do you mean by mental maturity? Is it the biological age, or the age, or the strengths that people bring into academics? So we've seen people do fantastic things across the world, even at younger ages. But the problem is this, and we must understand this also in the context of class consciousness. If you ask this Minister of Education when he went to school, at what age, you will find out that most likely he went to school at age of 18, 20, or even below 18, because at that time they were all getting into schools. Even his children, any of his child or even grandchildren, because he's now older, some of them would boastfully tell you that now they have 3 degrees, they have 4 degrees at the age of 24, 25. Some will, in fact, lower than that. But it is the son and the daughter of that woman who is selling pepper, who is selling orange at Mushin and different places, suburbs in Nigeria, that should have 1 degree at the age of 35. So we must understand all these arrangements, looking at even the unemployment rate in Nigeria, the limits that you even have for unemployment. And it's just, everything just seems as if this regime is actually after the lives of young people in this country. So there is no evidence to back this policy, that this policy is going to make sense. There's no evidence anybody, and if there's any, please put it out there. People who have gone to school and not have succeeded have done that at different ages. 60, 70, 18, less than 18, 15. It has nothing to do with biological age. And it is quite surprising, or shocking actually, that people who had gone to school are actually pushing forward these kind of arguments. It is quite shocking, to say the least.
Right. Now, I think another concern that I want to raise here is the fact that with all of these deliberations, no consultations were done with, according to the National Council on Education, they claim that they weren't consulted, this decision was just made anonymously. And again, this spotlights the anonymity or autonomy of decisions in Nigeria. What is your thought on that? And how does this relate to the lack of accountability that we are experiencing in this country?
Exactly. It speaks for itself. And it goes to tell you that the elite in this country, when I mean the elite, I mean the ruling class, they actually feel they know better than everyone, they know better than the people they are governing, quote and unquote, because I do not see any governance happening in Nigeria. So, to the point that they feel there's no point consulting you for anything. They just sit down in their own wisdom. And this is a supposed democracy where the rule of the majority should actually be the law. The rule of the majority, if the majority tells you tomorrow that this is what we want, that is what should happen in a democracy, while the interest of the minority is actually protected. But what you have in Nigeria is that the elite, there's this arrogance with the elite that they believe that they understand, more than anybody, and then there's no consultation, there's nothing. And that is why even in our National Assembly, you find bills. People would propose bills and then the bills would just disappear after protest by the people. It is one of my criticism of legislation in Nigeria. Bills should actually go through, I'm just digressing to that part. Bills should actually go through public hearing. That is my own opinion. Public hearing before you even have it at the National Assembly. Because if the laws are actually for the public should hear about those laws first. You should not have a first reading, second reading, third reading, and you've done all your quote and unquote mago within the house, and then you now call some civil society organizations to Abuja. You some kind of tea party, and you people agree that you've passed the bill into law. Public hearing should come first. The same thing for executive decisions. Consult the people. Why is it that politicians in Nigeria run away from the people? The only time they come to the people is during election, and after that, you don't see them again. Then they start making different things that come to their head. And maybe some of them, even after having nice time with their mistresses, that is when they just come up with some kind of idea and then they push it, and then they come on TV to espouse some of these very funny, very backward, very, very stone agey ideas. Things you should not be discussing at this time. In fact, it is that's to put it mildly, so that I don't go overboard on your TV station.
All right, Femi, thank you for that. Okay, also now, some people would argue that the said initiative is a good one, and it's even been the norm for a lot of people, because whether or not you start early, some things happen along the way, or eventually you have to write JAM twice, so it doesn't exactly make any difference. But their own agitation is the fact that it's now being forced down people's throats, and that's what they don't agree with. Do you think that that is true? And do you think that that is, in a way, showing that Nigerians are a little bit too lenient when it comes to the rules, what's the word now? The laws that are being passed down, and we just try to find excuse for everything, and we then adapt to it?
You've answered the question in a way, but the thing is, quite a number of things have actually been forced down the throats of Nigerians. But there's a new awakening, or probably there's an awakening where Nigerians are now coughing out many of these policies. They can't take it anymore. And that's why you can see, as soon as the idea dropped from the head of the Minister of Education, Nigerians immediately started talking about it. Already, the academic life of the average Nigerian has been extended by from the 6334 curriculum, educational system. There are quite a number of things that Nigerians do not need they are not needed anymore in our curriculum. But because we still have a curriculum that is very funny, a curriculum that is not providing solutions, so we still have that 6334 is still there, for you must go through that one. And when you're done, there are economic issues. Your parents may not be able to send you to school. There is JAM problem. So someone who now sits WAEC at 18 fails at the first time because there is no electricity to study. After that, sits again, then he's 20-year-old already. JAM is also there, sits JAM like twice, so that's 22 already before you enter the gates of any university. And after that, ASU strike is waiting for you because quite a number of us are from poor background. We are not going to Covenant University. We are not going to. So majority are actually going to public institutions. So then you have that order to cross again. ASU strikes that strike more than thunder in Nigeria. That happens almost every market days. So by the time you're done, you're almost useless to the world. That's the truth. You are almost useless to the world because the life expectancy in Nigeria today, I think, is around 51-year-old. So when you're done, let's say 26, 27, how many years do you have? You go for NYSC. How many years do you have left before everything is gone? So it is not a policy we should even be discussing at all. I consider it very peril to even discuss it. A serious Minister of Education by now should be discussing curriculum development, how to redesign our curriculum, both from secondary school down to the university, to make it solution providing, so that we can even have many of our engineers graduating and they're actually doing engineering. And you are not having a case where at the University of Lagos, for example, NEPA cut the lights. NEPA had to disconnect University of Lagos because they were owing charges. The Faculty of Engineering at the University of Lagos should have been able to build a power plant, despite all the electrical professors that you have in that faculty. They've not been able to build something, a solution for power at that university. These are the things that a serious Minister of Education should concern himself about, and not the age of sitting WAEC and all of that. It does not make sense.
All right. Very quickly, I would want us to talk about now the Deputy National President of NAPTAN, Chief Adeolu Ogunbanjo, said that they have spoken to some lawyers regarding this, and they said that, you know, everyone should just be patient and wait until the year 2025 rolls in, and then they'll see if they can fight it. So my question is, we've seen so many laws being passed down, so many bills translating into laws, and then it just becomes a final say. Do you think that this is one of the things that we possibly can fight?
I think I lost you.
Okay. Okay. I'm gonna let me take that again.
The last part.
Did you hear what I read before the last part?
Yes.
Okay, so I was just saying that, I mean, we've seen bills translating into laws, and then regardless of how many times they take you to court, and eventually it comes out as a final say. So I'm saying, is there a possibility that we can fight this one? Can this be reversed?
Yes. So all right, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Please go ahead.
The good thing is that there's a new consciousness in town, and that's the truth. And this consciousness would not wait for the law. Yes. And when I say this, and I say this philosophically, it is to the point that if the law continues to break the people may need to break away from the law to be free. And so we should expect a serious resistance to this particular age restriction idea from the Minister of Education. It's not going to work. There is no need to wait for 2025. There are several protests that will be happening even from this time till August 1st. So let all the children from age who will be affected by this policy, if it actually sees the light of the day, they should also join the protest. It's as simple as that. Let everybody come with their placards, and let's flood the streets until they understand that there's a consciousness in town that would not accept nonsense, that would not accept very useless policies like this.
Right.
That's how to put it.
Okay, thank you so much, Femi Adeyeye, Co-Convener and a Fund Education Coalition. Thank you for joining us. And let's see how this pans out. And thankfully, News Central is currently having had a town hall meeting in Abuja to discuss the hashtag End Bad Governance protest. And we see that people are still very, very passionate about fighting bad governance in Nigeria. So we're going to look forward to seeing how this pans out. Thank you once again.
You're welcome.
All right, it's been a very insightful episode of Fafanua Africa. Thank you so much for joining us, and join us again in our subsequent episodes as we discuss issues as they pertain to the youth. We're wrapping up now, and we would close with some quotes that we have for you.